What's up, y'all? It's Dyer Lawrence, and I'm here. This episode 1, the top 5 reasons college football postseason sucks. So we all love college football, and the bowls have been kind of fun. A lot of the games have been pretty competitive and good. But at the end of the day, they're still unsatisfying because you just don't feel like the postseason lives up to the great sport. So here's the reasons, the top 5 reasons college football sucks, and then how we can fix it in a real simple way. So number 1, subjectivity. At the end of the day, it's the only sport other than like figure skating or boxing decisions, which we always think are terrible a lot of the times. It's the only sport where people vote or decide as a committee who gets to play for the championship. That's flawed just by definition because it sets up a whole dynamic where you're encouraged to humiliate teams and schedule weak teams just to make sure you're on the right side of the committee, that you look good with your style points and you checked all the boxes. I heard a guy, I can't remember what analyst it was, but when Alabama played Western Carolina in like week 10, which is absurd, he said, yeah, they checked all the boxes. What's that even mean, you checked all the boxes? Like what? I mean, if anyone can name 3 players on Western Carolina, they deserve $1 million on Jeopardy. Because why that would even be scheduled at that point of the season is nuts. So, no more checking boxes, no more style points. Save that for figure skating. It's all about wins and losses in tough competition. So, for instance, Oregon arguably would have played for the national title if they didn't schedule that tough Auburn game in the first week of the season, which was awesome. That's how it should be. But it shouldn't be then they can't slip up the rest of the year. Like, they should be encouraged to play that type of game, win or lose. I mean, they were winning the whole way. And I'm not an Oregon fan. That's not the point. It's just we need to set up a system where it's not people. Condoleezza Rice isn't telling you about the Stanford secondary or whatever. I mean, it's not as confusing as the BCS computer, which no one in the world understood. But they still really, they're still justifying all their decisions. You can kind of see them doing it, ranking teams in a way to make their rankings justified. It's all still nonsense, and it's all still subjective. So one thing we need to do is kill the subjectivity. You know what I mean? Let's just make it what it is, where you can explain it simply. No committee. You don't have to meet in wherever they meet to, talk about their nonsense, and people have to leave the room when their team's being discussed, all that. Let's get rid of it. It's the only sport that's with a playoff that, is based on people's opinions. Let's kill opinions, kill style points, get rid of it. All right, number 2, weak schedules. The current system, since you got to stay perfect, especially if you're not, Alabama or one of the very biggest boys, you got to, it's stupid to schedule a tough non-conference schedule. It's so important to stay clean with your schedule. But that's not how sports should be. It shouldn't be the end of the world if you slip up, especially if you slip up against a good team. So the current system encourages you to play a weak schedule. And I mean, the one we just gave is a perfect example. Oregon might have gone to the playoff this year if they hadn't done something really cool and scheduled a great first round game. So let's get rid of weak schedules. Point 3. Sportsmanship, bad sportsmanship. The current system encourages bad sportsmanship because not only do you schedule Western Carolina or New Mexico State or whatever, South Dakota if you're Oklahoma, you have to humiliate them. So, you don't put your backups in till, if you put them in at all because you can't win by just 30, you have to win by 50 so that you check all the boxes. Screw the boxes, We shouldn't be scheduling those teams anyway. What's the point of scheduling, a team that you can handle, that there's no real competition, other than staying perfect and checking all the boxes? Screw all that. We need to have a system where it encourages you to play a tough non-conference schedule, or at least a competitive one. If you're a big boy from a big conference, play other big boys from other big conferences. And I know people will say, yeah, but the schedules are made years in advance, and you don't know how a team's going to be. Well, that is often true. But whenever Alabama scheduled New Mexico State, and I don't mean to pick on Alabama because, this is everybody. That's just one that's fresh in my mind. And Alabama is a beast, no doubt. But when you schedule New Mexico State, one thing if you're a college football fan you are pretty sure of is that New Mexico State's going to suck every single year. So if you say, oh, well, they scheduled New Mexico State 4 years ago, who knew they were going to suck? Well, I did, and pretty much everyone who follows college football does, because they suck every year. It's just one of those programs that sucks every year. So I know it's a good payday for them to get stomped, sacrificial lamb, but why? That shouldn't be what it's about. Let's have the big boys schedule the big boys and on down. Make these games, have the non-conference schedule be competitive. And the current thing, let's face it, I remember years back now, because I'm kind of old, Penn State beat Indiana, but they didn't beat them sufficiently. So they were like in the thing, they were in it, and then they won, but only by like 7 or something like that, and they didn't beat them by the 20 required to check all the boxes and style points and all that nonsense. And they dropped in the polls, and it ended up costing them. It shouldn't be about running up scores. A win's a win. It should be about winning the game. It should be about getting the kids in who are busting their ass on the practice field. Get them some time when you're up 20 in the third. Let them. You're still going to win. Don't, like this year they were saying to Dabo Swinney, what's wrong with Clemson, after 7 games? They're 7-0. There was nothing wrong. But they weren't, sufficiently humiliating their opponents. And I like where Dabo goes. He goes, look, man, these guys are busting their ass. I'm trying to get the other guys some time and experience. That's going to be good for us in the long run. That's what it should be about. It shouldn't be about, smoking teams by, I think Oklahoma hung 70 on South Dakota, whatever. Like, what's that prove? You know what I mean? Yeah, you got a great offense. Maybe, find a team to work on your defense a little more about. But I'm not looking to insult any team. It's not about that at all. That's a great program. They're all great, all these great programs. It's the current system that encourages them to do that. And it's smart to do it under the current system. But any system that encourages bad sportsmanship is shitty. And that's why, like in the NFL, teams go out of their way not to embarrass teams late. They're always taking a knee late instead of scoring. Or they're taking the air out of the ball. Because they know next year this could be us on the other end because there's parity in the NFL. So you don't want to be the guy, with that coach you just did that to a year ago. Now he's got the stick and you're screwed. But in college, the same guys have the stick every year. So they're not so worried about the other guy having the stick in the future because the thing's set up for the big boys so thoroughly that there's not, and you're encouraged to whoop the other team because people look at those scores. The committee looks at the scores and, justifies their opinions based on scores. It's no good. It's just no good. And no other sport does it like that. And anything that encourages bad sportsmanship, especially in collegiate athletics, it's no good. It's just, it needs to be changed. So let's see, number 4. The playoffs not inclusive enough. So I've heard, everyone wants 8 teams. 4 is not enough. 4 out of 130 teams, I wouldn't even, if you did the same percentage of like the NFL or the NBA or whatever, I don't think you'd even have enough teams. You wouldn't even have 2 teams to play each other at such a low percentage. And I know this year, there's 3 teams that kind of seem pretty much head and shoulders above the rest. And this is a kind of weird year. It does seem like it's Ohio State, LSU, and Clemson, and then who's the 4th? There's probably a number of teams that could arguably be the 4th. But it's not usually like that. So some people say, oh, it'll water it down. Maybe, but at least there'll be one on the field. You can't have teams going, like Central Florida goes undefeated, beats a big SEC team in the final, and doesn't win anything. That's nuts. I mean, what sport can you go undefeated in? Like you should get to lose on the field when you have that kind of season. And I have the answer to all these things, but right now I'm just laying out what we're trying to solve. So the Tim Brando's been going hard for an 8 team. 8 would be way better. Now I've been tracking my system for I got it back to 1960. Now I don't go back to 1960, but I can, since my thing's objective and it's no opinions, I can recreate it every year. So I personally think 16 is the right number for maximum interest. And some people say, oh, the first round will be lame. It's not, and I can prove it because I got the brackets going back to 1960. So if you want to see, I have the last 10 years on my website, www.lawrencepoints.com, if you want to check out what the last 10 years worth of brackets look like. And to me, it's an improvement over what we're doing every single year. And that's under the their shitty current scheduling dynamic, which sucks. If they incorporated my what I call Lawrence points to seed the playoff, it would be even tighter because it would change the scheduling dynamic that is currently used. But even using their scheduling shitty dynamic, my playoff is better every single year. And you would never have, like this year, we're all going to be pretty content with whoever wins that, probably the best team, Clemson. But there's been many years where you're not sure the best team won it. I remember back watching when Pete Carroll, back in the SC days, they'd screw up one weird game at like Washington State or something, that second loss, and they'd be done. But then you'd see him play in the Rose Bowl late in the year, and you'd be like, man, that looks like it might be the best team in the country. But they wouldn't even be playing for nothing other than, the Rose Bowl's cool. But they wouldn't be playing for it all. So a lot of years, 4 isn't enough. You don't know, 4 or 5, 6. You never know. And some teams have weird injuries that set them back early in the year. Then they get healthy. They start to gel. So it would be better. And then when teams have their epic years, so big Miami O has Big Ben, and they're kicking ass, and they were great. But they get their shot to either win or lose on the field. When Marshall had Randy Moss and Chad Pennington, they have their epic year in their program, they get their shot. If you're a team and you have your tremendous, your your year of all years, you get your shot to play it out on the field like you should, rather than, they'd kill them. I heard everyone talking shit, Minnesota sucks, Big Ten sucks. They just look pretty good against Auburn. You don't know until they play them. I mean, we have an idea. But that's why we play them. That's the great thing about sports. It's the one thing. It is merit. You know what I mean? You got to do it on the field. So let's get it on the field rather than opinion. We all have opinions. We're all right. We're all wrong. It don't mean shit. Let's do it on the field like all sports should in playoffs, right? All right. So number 5. Oh, here's the thing. So number 5, and this is becoming a bigger and bigger problem. One of the biggest handicaps now you hear all these Vegas guys talking about is who's sitting. So all these big programs, they have 7 guys sitting. They have 5 guys sitting. There are guys, because they're all scared to get hurt, which is, you can't really blame them, especially when at the end of the day, they wouldn't sit if they were playing for a national championship. I don't believe anyone sat, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe anyone sat who was playing for the actual title. Because you'd have to be a kind of shaky character to not want to be with your team if you're playing for a national title. But if you're McCaffrey and you're in some weird bowl that, it's not worth risking, really. You're kind of nuts if you do it. I mean, God bless all the guys that do, and thankfully they seem to generally not get hurt. But it's not worth the risk when you're not playing for nothing. Football's just not really a sport, at that high level that you want to play for nothing. But if you were more inclusive and let more teams have a shot at winning the championship, I believe not many guys would sit. I mean, that would be a kind of a black mark against you if you were choosing to sit and not be with your boys when you're playing for all the chips. That wouldn't look good. I wouldn't think if I was an NFL GM or if I was a player, and some guy had sat when they were playing for a title, I don't think that would happen anymore. I mean, I don't know, but I don't think so. Because you're playing for it all. It's good stuff. So basically, to review, the 5 things, and next video I'm going to start addressing the solution to these 5 problems. But it's all about Lawrence points, and I'll be introducing you to that in the next video. But here's why I invented it, to correct these 5 things primarily, top 5 things. Subjectivity. Get rid of all opinions, all style points, weak schedules. Right now, you're still encouraged to play a weak schedule. Get rid of that. Encourage a tough non-conference, and it's not the end of the world if you lose, but it's a big deal if you win because every game matters. So let's get rid of those weak Western Carolina, New Mexico State, South Dakota, the big boys stomping these poor teams. It's just not cool, even though I know they get a payday for taking their beating. Not cool. 3, poor sportsmanship. The fact they're still encouraged to run up scores. You don't play the bench like you should. The current system encourages poor sportsmanship, and anything that encourages that, especially at the amateur level, which supposedly this is, although that's debatable, anything that encourages that is shitty and shouldn't be able to continue just on that. So it gets rid of that. Bad sportsmanship. 4, not inclusive enough. 130 teams, 4 is not enough. And if you gave more people a chance to compete for the whole thing, I think you'd notice the recruiting would even out a lot too. And it wouldn't be just the big boys continuing to get all the top guys, because the top guys would know they could also get on the big stage at more programs. And I think that would help if you're Boise State and you could say, well, we've made the playoff 10 out of the last 15 years. That's a nice thing to be able to say to a high school kid, that there's a real good chance if you come here. So I think it would help with a little parity, which would make everything more interesting too. Because right now it's becoming the haves. It's like America. You got the tiny elite living like kings, and then there's everybody else scraping to get by. And that's no good. So let's set a good example for America with college football, and let's get it a little more parity. It's way more fun and more interesting when more teams have a shot, right? All right, and 5, I believe let's get rid of this sitting out bowls. It's becoming overwhelming. Can't blame the kids. I don't. But it's lame as hell. And nope, and the other thing you hear half these bowl games, one of the big handicaps is, do they want to be there? Can you imagine a postseason? Can you imagine, so the Texans are playing the Bills this weekend. Can you imagine if one of the commentaries you're hearing from the Texans don't really look like they want to be here? It's postseason. What's that even mean? But in the bowl games, we know what it means. Half the stands are empty. No one gives a shit half the time. You know what I mean? You could tell it's a real thing. But that should never be a factor in postseason sports. They don't look like they want to be here. What? It's postseason. What are we doing this for if they don't want to be here now? Well, because at the end of the day, it's cool, but it sucks. You know what I mean? And we all know it, and the players know it, and they know it's not. Can you imagine if you blew your knee out in some friggin' game that no one gives a shit about, except for whatever the bowl committee that got to travel around scouting these teams, whoever benefits from this stuff. You know what I mean? There's always someone who wants to keep it like it is because they're getting theirs. Screw that. Let's just do it right. You know what I mean? Let's do it. This could be. You can make college football better than the NFL. It could be a combination of the NFL playoffs and March Madness. Imagine how cool that would be. So I don't want to go too long right now. I just wanted to tell you the 5 things that suck about college football that I'm going to propose a fix for. But that's coming up in the next video, so stay tuned because I'm gonna show you. Then you won't be able to say, "Oh, there's no real answer to it." Whatever you do, someone's gonna be mad. Yeah, whatever. We can fix those 5 things. So stay tuned. Thanks. Checking out.